This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And sponsored by Uber Creative Agency, a boutique web design, development, and marketing agency based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with clients across the U.S. We don't just provide services, we deliver value.
Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara.
And welcome once again to the Lake Superior Podcast. Frida, today we're going to be talking with a gentleman that's affiliated with an event that happens in Marquette, but really is universal to the entire Great Lakes region. That is the Fresh Coast Film Festival. And I think a lot of people are going to say, man, I didn't even know this was going on.
Oh,
this
really?
is great. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it always is. It's one of the most amazing weekends. It's usually when, all the hardwoods put their party dresses on, so the colors are fabulous. Mm-hmm. But it's also, Walt, I'm an old videographer.
Yep.
Really, I started my career in film. Like in the old days when we were cutting 16 millimeter with, those little splicey
True
deals.
filmmaking.
Yeah.
In a way.
The B-roll was complicated.
Yes.
Yeah. But I have just loved our guest. Oh, love. He not only captures, I remember the first time I saw his program, Cold Rolled. I was at an event with a bunch of ski riders, and I said, guys, you got to come see this. You got to come see this. And they were like, snow biking? What is that?
And that's really what the whole thing is about with the Fresh Coast Film Festival. Is it's adventure films, it's outdoor films, it's tied into the protections of the Great Lakes. And I think we could talk about it as much as we want, but we'd rather hear about it from one of the filmmakers involved from way back when, and also the co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival. It's Aaron Peterson. Hello, Aaron. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, guys. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You and I, Aaron, met when these first ones kind of got going a little bit with the Fresh Coast Film Festival, and Frida's been involved back and forth with it for several years. But let's tell everybody a little bit about yourself first before we even got to the Fresh Coast Film Festival. Tell us a little bit about your life path, what led you to be a filmmaker in Upper Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. I fell in love with Lake Superior, high school years. I had family up in the Bayfield, Wisconsin area, living and working up there and visiting them in the summers. Got tangled up with sea kayaking in the Apostle Islands and fell in love with the big lake. That led to after school in Madison, trying to make my way north, and I ended up in Marquette in 2001, working as a photographer and a writer at the local newspaper there, the Mining Journal. One thing led to another, and started a writing and photography freelance career, working in magazines, print journalism, feature writing, travel writing primarily, talking about the region and some of the adventures that could be had here. As technology shifted, video came into the photo cameras that we were all using. I started to dabble with it and connected with some other videographers and filmmakers that were working in the mountain bike space, the adventure cinema space. They encouraged me to give it a try, and it was sort of this dope slap moment where you just kind of slap your forehead and say, "Oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing." Story writing combined with the visuals of photography or video. it all kind of came together in making short films, and then just the curiosity of journalism, just sort of asking those questions, pulling those strings, and following paths to see where they led, and that's how it progressed. And I have made a number of short films over the years, but pay the bills with commercial photography and commercial video, primarily in the travel world and the outdoor world.
We got to let folks know that chances are, if you've seen this jaw-dropping photo of Marquette or Michigan, really, it's look at the byline, and it came from Aaron. Because you know what I love about you, Aaron? I mean, I remember when we first met, we were kayaking together, and it was such a special, whoa, yeah, he does it. He does it all. He's not just saying, okay, I'll stay on shore with a tripod, but you take that equipment and you go to get the story. And that, I think, is kind of when you even talk about cold rolled. To do any photography in the winter is difficult, and managing what you have to do on a bike in winter, riding over ice, it's really something. And that film actually, when we lead to Fresh Coast, that kind of brought you to where there was going to be a film festival, because one thing to be a filmmaker, another thing to start the wheels in motion for a film festival.
Yeah, how'd that come to be for you?
Yeah, it's anybody that has cross-country skied or ski jumped is probably familiar with the concept of falling forward. And that's to me, that's kind of what, when I look at where I started and where I'm going, it's a series of sort of falling forward and catching yourself on your poles just before it's too late and taking that energy and moving forward. So I made Cold Rolled almost accidentally. It was part of a package of videos I was commissioned to do for Travel Marquette. And, it was going to be a short film, a very short film, just saying, here are these bikes that ride on snow in Marquette. You should come check it out. There ended up being an interesting backstory, and, the resulting film was 20 minutes. Two things were happening. It was a golden time for social media and video, pre-algorithms, when viral was still possible. Mm-hmm. And so that it took off there, but it also it was also the time as this sport was just developing, and the resources around the sport being able to groom winter trails for these bikes were just sort of starting to gel. So it was, right place, right time, right sport. And that took me to mountain film mountain film in Telluride, Colorado. I didn't know anything about it until I got an email from the director asking me to bring Cold Rolled there. And, when you get an invitation like that, I decided, I want to be there in person as well. And drove the minivan out to Denver and then further to Telluride, which is, everybody knows it's a really hard place to get to, sort of like Marquette.
Mm-hmm. All right.
A beautiful place that's hard to get to and full of just that energy, sort of that creative energy. And there it comes from the mountains, here it comes from the lake.
Yeah.
So I was there with Cold Rolled in 2014, showed the film, was just really blown away by the festival, just the energy, the inspiration, the sense of community with other filmmakers. I'm in a theater and I'm sitting next to Alex Honnold, the famous climber from Free Solo, and these people that, and you're just sort of going, you're pinching yourself, saying, why am I here? But you're also looking around and you're going, why am I the only Michigander, the only Midwesterner, the only Great Laker here? And when you know that there's stories back home, and you've just scratched the surface with your own career, and that was sort of the first seed of like, okay, why don't we have this for our region, or a version of it? And of course, you can pay the licensing fee, you can bring mountain film in, or you can bring BAMF in, and a lot of communities do that. Mm-hmm. But it's not organic, it's right. Not as organic as it could be.
It's really, it's interesting, Aaron, because you're reminding me of conversations that you and I had when you were getting this thing going several years ago, because I was involved in getting the Marquette Area Blues Festival going in Marquette. And we had a lot of similarities that we talked about. about that spirit of let's just do this because this town, this area needs one. And that's really kind of, it sounds like I'm hearing kind of the same thing.
Oh, I want to add to that. So that seed was planted in that box canyon. Telluride is a box canyon. Like you said, it's kind of the dead end. And you know what it needed? It needed water.
Right.
Grow that seed. Oh, Aaron, what a magical experience. Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing time, and again, right place, right time. That whole falling forward kind of feeling, and
exactly.
Yeah, so the Fresh Coast is unapologetically built on the example of mountain film. I've been back several times with other films, and and it's gotten to the point. It's really interesting to see as we've evolved what we've added to that model, and we being Fresh Coast. We've added these outdoor tours, which was sort of a novel concept. No one was doing that. It was more about the films, and we really wanted to get people's boots on the ground and get them involved in the outdoors. We have this great university, NMU, with, this trend-setting school of outdoor recreation and leadership. And, they created curriculum around the festival to plan and carry out the outdoor tours that we have as part of the film festival. And now you see other festivals sort of borrowing that ideas back from us, and that's really exciting.
We're talking with Aaron Peterson here on the Lake Superior podcast today. He is co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival. This year, it's October 13th through the 16th in Marquette. But Aaron, you kind of touched on it a little bit. This is the sixth or so festival, and there's a few years under your belt. You mentioned how it's changed, outdoor tours and working with the university, but there's probably been some other changes too. I'm guessing that as it's grown, filmmakers are coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, we've got something to show you. That's got to be some of the changes, but how has this event changed from the beginning?
Right. Well, so part of our mission is to sort of share the water-based culture of the Great Lakes and that spirit of resiliency that I think anyone who's from here, especially the UP and the northern areas, that spirit of resiliency and that can-do attitude. So those things haven't changed, but because that resiliency is sort of bred into the festival, and being able to adapt each year as every year the films are different. Sometimes it's all short films, sometimes there's features, sometimes there's humor, sometimes there's serious things, and I feel like the festival has sort of adapted each year to kind of take a lay of the land and to kind of hold up what's being talked about, what's the conversation that year, and kind of make its own road, not necessarily just follow what the other festivals are doing, because maybe something that's happening in Banff isn't necessarily as crucial to what's happening in Duluth or Thunder Bay or Traverse City.
What I'm hearing here is that the festival in and of itself can change every year a little bit. But one of the questions is like, how do you come to a general conclusion on what you're going to air? I mean, how do you select the films? I mean, if the theme can kind of rotate, I mean, you've got so many films that you show. It's about 80 of them or so this year, different lengths and everything like that. But what is the process? How do you decide what makes it to the final cut of the year's festival?
Yeah, I'm a little self-conscious about that, but so far so good. Dictatorships are very efficient, and I do.
There you go.
Yeah, I hear you.
I am able to be the person that makes all the decisions on programming and soliciting films and also choosing what's been submitted to us. So we get around 40 to 50 films submitted to us through an online portal that's pretty standard in the industry. It's called filmfreeway.com. Mm-hmm. Out of that, we take about half of those usually. And then, over the years, the network has grown. We have, all of our alumni from previous years, we approach at the beginning of every season and say, hey, what do you have that you've been working on? And so we get things sent to us that way. And then also we look at the other festivals that we respect and that we draw inspiration from, and kind of glean the programming that maybe is applicable to our region or just really, really good. And, about 50% of the festival is, our goal is to have about 50% of the festival's content be regional, and then the rest of it is just really good and interesting that makes it, ties us into that global conversation around climate and adventure and social justice.
You know what I think is really cool is that you also don't just invite those films, you often invite the filmmakers to come here as well. That's so cool.
And that's what makes it a festival. A festival, just showing films is it's still better than sitting at home or scrolling on your phone to gather, but having the people there, having the makers there, and being able to hear the stories behind them and meet the characters in them, the subjects of the film as well, that is what elevates it from beyond just watching videos to having an experience and having a really human experience of hearing those stories. You see the film, you talk to the person that made it, you hear the story behind it. Sometimes, a lot of our films are short, so it might be a 5 or 10 minute film, but you have a 15 to 20 minute conversation afterwards. And that's the festival experience.
That's what I love. When you look at it, you're in a darkened room, and we got to tell our folks too where they're going to see these films, because I think that's also what makes it so special. And we'll get to that in just a second. But when I look around the room and you see everyone just like mesmerized at this glowing screen and knowing that, it's a lot of like-minded there and that the creator is sitting there right with you. So as you're watching and you have these questions and they bubble up, and as soon as, lights are back on, get a chance to meet that filmmaker, it's like the room just explodes with great conversation and questions. And it has an energy. You keep using that word, Aaron, and you're right on. You nailed it. It's an energy, and it's an energy that I think I've never left a Fresh Coast film without feeling changed. And that's what's so powerful.
Yeah, I agree. That's our goal. Our driving themes are adventure, conservation, and inspiration. And if filmmakers and our audience aren't going away feeling the spark from one of those, if not all of them, then we haven't done our job. And, the growth every year, both in the number of attending filmmakers, the number of films being submitted, the growing audience, those numbers, I think, say that we're doing okay.
We're talking with Aaron Peterson today, co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival. This year it's happening in mid-October, the 13th through the 16th in Marquette. It goes on every year. Let's kind of break it down a little bit. Can you talk about a little bit, Aaron, the specifics of where do people get to see these films, and do they have to get a ticket for the whole weekend or a pass, or can they just do individual days? What is some of the nuts and bolts of this?
Yeah, nuts and bolts. Perfect analogy. So, the toolbox is at freshcoastfilm.com. Freshcoastfilm.com is our portal to, right now, we have our film selection live. Our schedule, I believe, is live in the next day or two. So, by the time this airs, everything will be live. And that's also our ticket portal. So we push everything through the website. As the festival starts, we have a downtown box office at Campfire Co-works. Our ticket structure is, we have day passes for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so that's a single day. There's 4 time slots each day. We have 3 film blocks during the day, and then we have evening programming on Friday and Saturday. So you can, if you buy a Friday day pass, you have a 10 a.m., a noon, and a 2-hour film block, and then there's a break, and we gather again in the evening for our evening marquee programming. We also have a weekend pass, the entire weekend, all included. That includes your choice of outdoor tours as well.
Is there any way, Aaron, you can give us maybe at least some of the highlights or a teaser of some of the things that are happening at the festival this year with the films? Are there particular ones that you're really proud of that you snagged? Maybe you've got somebody coming. What's a sort of a little teaser for us?
Absolutely. I think the first thing to know about Fresh Coast is that we're primarily short films. So we do 2-hour programming blocks with about an hour of short film programming within that, which then allows, another 30 to 40 minutes of conversations with the filmmakers that are here with the films. So you could expect to experience a film block. For example, we have one called The Pursuit, and it has 6 short films in it. Out of those 6 films, we have 3 of them that have filmmakers present that'll be there to answer questions. Everything from, a 3-minute short called I Am Salmon. It's an art piece talking about West Coast salmon. It's hard to explain. You have to see it, but it's really artfully done. Up to a film called The Black Stonefly, which is about an African-American fly fisherman talking about what it's like to be a person of color in a non-traditional space like fly fishing, like angling in general. And then in that same block, we have absolute humor, laugh-out-loud humor from a gentleman called Nate P. out of the Twin Cities. He's a YouTuber with a fishing and culinary program on YouTube that is just laugh-out-loud funny. He has a background in the metal scene, the metal music scene out of the Twin Cities, so he knows how to work a crowd, and he's just hilarious. He's actually going to be our Saturday night feature presentation. He's going to put on we don't really know what he's going to do, but we know it's going to be funny and weird. We're a little worried, but confident.
Again, where can folks find the full schedule? You mentioned the website. Please give it to us again, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. The schedule and the films are listed at freshcoastfilm.com, and you can also buy tickets there.
Well, and we need to let folks know that you're not going to be watching all these films in this giant auditorium. You get to walk around town. You get to go and maybe sit at the library or have a beer or that is so creative. I love the places these films are shown.
That's right. That was one of our right off the bat, I wanted to use non-traditional spaces to get people sort of into the community, into the kind of the corners of the community. So, we're using spaces like our breweries, our downtown breweries, Black Rocks Brewery, Ordock Brewery. All of our venues are walkable. We have 7 venues in total. We have 6 for our daytime programming, and then we have our evening base camp, Fresh Coast Base Camp, which is a big tent on Lake Superior down at the Lower Harbor Park in downtown Marquette.
With that downtown base camp, Aaron, we better let everybody know that, it's really the dress code in Marquette. It is, so specific.
In October? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, it's almost like the UP 200, Walt. Just be ready. The dress code in Marquette is warm. Just whatever you need to wear to be warm. And if that means that you're layered up in, a couple, I don't know.
Better to have more than you need than not enough, and you can always take that off somewhere as opposed to be stuck down by the lake or something. And that's really the key thing. And actually, Aaron, that ties into this next question I have for you here. And we're talking with Aaron Peterson today, who's co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival coming up in mid-October in Marquette. This is not just watching films in these various locations. You have outdoor events planned as well. What can you tell us about that?
We have 11 outdoor tours that are at part of the festival. So every morning there's tours going out sort of before the film blocks start, and it's a kind of a choose your own adventure for pass holders. There's walking history tours. Most of them are fairly low impact, designed to appeal to a wide variety of audience members. Our outdoor events cover a wide variety of outdoor activities in the Marquette area, and they're really meant to show off the landscape that inspired us to create the festival and inspires our work. Hike up Sugarloaf, learn about the history of downtown Marquette, some of the historic buildings, see a waterfall, maybe go rock climbing out on the backside of Marquette Mountain, stuff like that.
And even if you're new to Marquette and you've never been here and you're visiting because of the festival, just go stand on the shore of Lake Superior and look at it. I mean, if you can do that, there's just so much power and inspiration. The big lake breeds big ideas and big thoughts, and I'll tell you, that is a good part of it. And I want to ask you about that, Aaron. I mean, we've talked a lot about now the sort of the business end of the festival, but when you look at this after these several years and you've been involved with it off and on through the whole process, Are there successes or are there moments as you've been at the event that have hit that mark that you kind of said, I want to do something really cool with this? Like, what was like maybe some of your favorite moments or your best moments that you can share about the experience of this film festival, these stories, and these filmmakers and all these people coming together?
Right. It kind of splits along two lines, along like the filmmakers line and sort of the professional line, and then also the audience. It really, there's two communities that come together, and while they do share and overlap, the impact, the feedback I've heard from people attending the film festival of just how proud they are to have something like this in Marquette and for the Great Lakes region. You can't put a number on that like that. And we hear it over and over again. People are, one, they're surprised to have this thing have sort of popped up in their community, but at the same time, they just sort of nod and they understand that these are the kind of things that happen in a creative community, in a place that has that creative energy. Mm-hmm. And then also the filmmakers gathering folks together that often work in a bubble. I mean, there's no water cooler for this industry, and film festivals sort of are that thing. And to be able to gather, and they're coming from all over the country. A lot of them do have Midwest roots, but are kind of coming back home maybe for the first time in a while. To see that community grow and feed off each other, both just drawing inspiration from each other, but also professionally getting connected and sharing workload. And we within the first 2 years, there were examples of people who had met at Fresh Coast and were editing for each other or shooting something that was in their region that another filmmaker couldn't get to. So you see commerce and economic value come out of it as well. It isn't just inspiration. There's an industry that's growing, and I don't know if Fresh Coast is necessarily the cause of that, but it's certainly become sort of a hub for that.
I remember Walt talking about musicians that were feeling just like up against the wall, that nothing was happening for them. And they came to Marquette, and Walt, you tell that so well.
Yeah, it was a story of some musicians that I knew that were visiting Marquette. They were touring through, and some of the guys on the blues scene out of Atlanta at the time, they were trying to write some music, and they couldn't get the inspiration, and they just couldn't do it. And they were a 2-night stay in Marquette, a Friday night and a Saturday night. And I was talking to them on Saturday, and they said that they went for a walk. 2 of them went for the walk, sort of the main leaders of the group, went for a walk along the lakeshore in Marquette, along the Lake Superior shoreline at Lower Harbor Park and out toward the lighthouse. And they said that they just suddenly they got this energy off of the lake, this creativity that came off of it that helped them to start to write. And they were able to write a couple songs back at the hotel room that afternoon that it broke the writer's block. And Aaron, that's kind of the thing here is, the big lake gives you these inspirations. The big lake gives you this creative energy that you harness to turn into this event. And now you're sharing that with people that when they come, maybe they've been here before, maybe they haven't, but there's no denying Lake Superior in the overall experience of Fresh Coast Film Festival, is there?
No, it absolutely can't be stated enough that it isn't something that was created in a vacuum. I mean, this certainly is drawn from the land, and then I hope gives back value as well.
Marquette is not just a place, but it has a power, and I am so grateful, Aaron, that Cold Roll took you to Telluride. Telluride planted a seed. You brought it back and you watered it darn good there, Boyka. I'll tell you, because I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, and we appreciate you giving us an update on it and a discussion about it, because there will be a Fresh Coast Film Festival rolling forward as best as you can, or falling forward, I guess you would say, Aaron. And just as we wrap up, one more time, what's the website for folks to find out more about Fresh Coast Film Festival?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you need to know about the festival is at freshcoastfilm.com. We've got 80-plus films this year, a number of feature-length films, which is new for us, but certainly worth checking out. A lot of them do have regional connections, so have a seat and enjoy a film, and then get together afterwards and talk about it.
Well, thanks, Aaron. We really appreciate your time this morning. Filmmaker and also co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival, joining us on the podcast. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you there.
You betcha.
It's Aaron Peterson, co-founder and director of the Fresh Coast Film Festival in Marquette. It's happening October 13th through the 16th this year, but that's kind of the general time of year, Frida, that they do it. But talking with Aaron, it's just he's a very low-key guy. You know, he's kind of like me in that sense, that it's like there's a lot going on, and you don't really focus on the big picture. I'm sure he does, but he doesn't. You know, it's like getting the minutia together to create this large event that represents not only Lake Superior, but a lot of these issues and everything that are key. But we didn't even talk about it with him on this. I have been absolutely blown away by the quality of the films that are shown. And I mean, even just sort of the relatively unknown or amateur filmmakers and the technology that they have and the stories that they can tell. You mentioned that we started the podcast, Frida, about working in film and the news coverage back that you used to do in videography. It's amazing when you look at some of these films, especially like the climbing films, the kayaking films, how they can pull it off.
Well, remember, it wasn't too long ago that we talked with Ian Planchen, and his film will be here. That's about surfing, Fresh Coast, and surfing over in the Duluth area primarily. But he was just blown away by seeing these guys on the lake, and then said, I got to bring my cameras back. And from that came a very involved documentary about the health of Lake Superior. So that's what we like to, always having that story. But I just love the, create it. Somebody didn't say, no, Aaron, that won't work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And then you fall forward. I know exactly what he means by that. We
don't
do that.
endo. Now, Ron did that on a mountain bike last week, and he got 3 broken ribs. So don't go over the handlebars.
No, I'm not going over the handlebars, but you and I fall forward every time we do one of these. And this has been good to get another one taken care of for this time around. Again, this is all brought to you by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. And that's the idea of the foundation, to support the national parks, support the beauty and the power of Lake Superior. If you've got a story idea, or a song idea for that matter, let us know. We like to talk to all of you that are connected to Lake Superior and the national parks, and you can find us through the foundation's website, Facebook page, and where you're listening to this particular podcast. So absolutely.
And to invite these folks that are listening now to our town, Walt, to Marquette for Fresh Coast, that Thursday night as the whole event kicks off, it's a free night. You're down at base camp. You're in a tent, dressed for it.
You get a chance to see some of the films for free, and it's a great celebration of the Great Lakes and the greatest lake, and that's Lake Superior. That's going to do it for us this time around, and I'm Walt Lindala.
I'm Frida Waara. Thanks for listening. The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. national park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Waara.
And I'm Walt Lindala. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior Podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And sponsored by Uber Creative Agency, a boutique web design, development, and marketing agency based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with clients across the U.S. We don't just provide services, we deliver value.